Story 1. I am now 46 years old and a technology professional. I still have my zero-gauge plugs. There have been no changes in more than 20 years. Story 2. I was a piercer in my early 20s. I stretched my earlobes to 3/4 of an inch and had my conches pierced at gauge 6. I am also heavily tattooed. I stopped wearing the jewelry about 15 years ago. My earlobes are now around 1/4 of an inch, and the skin has partially grown around the holes in my conches. My work is an office job. I wear conservative business casual clothing, including wool slacks, dress shirts, and leather shoes, and I have a conservative hairstyle. No one has ever said anything to me about the holes in my ears. Story 3. My brother still has his. He did not go too big. He had small earlobes to begin with, but he still loves them. It has been so long now that I cannot picture him without them. Story 4. I stretched my earlobes to 11/16 of an inch. I stopped wearing plugs around 2016. The hole stopped shrinking after about a year, and I can still comfortably fit a zero gauge. Story 5. Mom always hated them, but I said I would stretch up to 0 and never go further. That was about 20 years ago. I still have them at 0 and never went further. I considered it for a while but did not want to buy all new jewelry. Now I have a great collection. Story 6. Doing great. I've taken mine out a few times, let them close and stretched again. I've been at 5/8 for almost 10 years. I was at 0 gauge and double 0 gauge the other times earlier on. Story 7. Good. Still gauged. I will say jewelry options these days are much better. I mostly wear combination ring stacks now instead of plugs. I get compliments on them all the time. Story 8. Started them in 1999 knowing I wanted to be 25 millimeters or 1 inch at the end. Finished them in 2021. I love them so much and I'm glad I took my time getting there. Story 9. No judgment on those who have done it, but I am in my mid-50s and certainly do not need any help with having body parts that dangle and sag. Story 10. I never went beyond a 4G, but I am still using them. I am still wearing the same rings. My wife still has 0G tunnels as well. We are both in our early 40s. Story 11. I am 38 millimeters in my early 30s. I want to reach 50 millimeters at some point. I work in higher education. No one cares. Story 12. 5/8 still wearing my earplugs at almost 40, middle manager in corporate. I wear fancy eyelets sometimes, only on weekends. Story 13. I tried to let them heal. I only went to 4 gauge and they never quite returned to normal. Earrings were always loose, and I always felt uncomfortable about them. During COVID, I became frustrated and resized them back to 4 gauge. I am now at 0 gauge and wear basic wooden plugs. I am in my mid-30s, have a very corporate remote job, and no one seems to mind my plugs or my 11 other very visible piercings. Story 14. I started stretching mine in 2003 and got to just over an inch. I still have them. To be honest, it has been so long that I completely forget they are stretched. It is just the way they are. I used to get a lot of comments, both negative and positive. Now, not so much. I did it for myself and I still have them for myself, so I am happy. Story 15. I went to 0 gauge and took them out while I was in the army. They closed down to about a 14 gauge. About 10 years later, I had to slowly work my way back up to a 0 gauge, which is where I will stay. Story 16. Probably not a very interesting story. I took them out around the time I started working after college. They shrank from half an inch down to almost nothing. I can barely tell I had them now. Story 17. Do their ears hang low? Do they wobble? Do they flow? Can you tie them in a knot? Can you tie them in a bow? Story 18. Ears are fine. They used to be 1.5 inches, but I let them shrink down to just 1 inch. I work in a corporate office for a large insurance company, and no one cares. Story 19. At 33, I am still happy with them. I do not wear plugs anymore. Now I wear 6/14 gauge hoops in each earlobe. I receive compliments all the time. Story 20. I have had my earlobes stretched since 1994. I think my ears would look strange to me without stretched earlobes. I have removed almost all my other piercings, but those have remained. Story 21. Got mine done in 2014. 11 years later, and I am sitting at half an inch or 13 millimeters. Still love them and do not think I will likely get rid of them. I just wish my ears were a little stiffer. They seem to want to push up to 9/16 after being at 13 millimeters for a few years. I work in an office as a computer graphics artist, so it does not matter for my career so much. Story 22. Had them since 2006 or 2007. 32 millimeters was the largest size I went to, but now I just stay at 25 millimeters. I could have had them surgically sewn up, but decided against it and instead got my upper ears pierced to wear regular earrings. Story 23. Still have them 20 years later. They have not hindered any job opportunities as the adults said they would. Story 24. Had a half inch. I actually took them out recently and am getting the procedure done to have them fixed. Only because I am entering the military and can have them. If it were not for that, I would still have them. 15 years. Story 25. Had cavities. Took them out and by some grace of a miracle they closed up almost perfectly. I feel quite fortunate. Story 26. I work at a Fortune 100 company in the United States. During some of the larger meetings, I noticed a man from another department whose ears are extremely stretched, about the diameter of the smallest energy drink can. He has different color plugs or inserts at different meetings. I checked our organizational chart to see who he was, and it turns out he is working at the director level, which is several ranks up the ladder and commands a lot of respect. Apparently, his gauged ears never hindered his success. Story 27. I can barely fit a regular earring through one hole, and the other is completely closed up. They were 0 gauge. Story 28. I got my earlobes pierced with a 10-gauge needle when I was 19 years old. Over the next couple of years, I stretched them to half an inch, then let them close up in my late 20s. They closed up well and now look like normal piercings. Story 29. By 16 or 17 years old, my ears were 1 inch. That was back in 2008 and 2009. I had to remove plugs and piercings, including nostril and lip, for my first job around 2011 and just let my ears close up at that point. They are now around 0 gauge and I still like them. I wear acrylic plugs, mostly earth tones, but I would like to get them surgically repaired so I can wear cute earrings one day. I just have no money to do so right now. Story 30. Had half gauges 16 years ago, and now they have just returned to normal piercings. I do not even wear earrings anymore. Story 31. Had double zeros and haven't worn them in years. The hole shrank a lot. You can see light shining through it if I put my back to the sun at the right angle. Story 32. The largest mine hole was 11/16 inch. I had them stretched for about a year and reduced them to approximately a 0 gauge. Then, a professional body modification artist stitched them closed for $50. There are small scars now, but they are hardly noticeable. In fact, only one person in 15 years has ever mentioned them. Story 33. Just turned 40 and still have my original piercings and conch piercing. Got my daith pierced as a 40th birthday gift to myself. Married government employee with 3 dogs, 1 cat, and no children by choice. Story 34. I gauged mine when I was 16 in 2003. I still have them now. I only went to 1/2 inch, but I have had them so long that I have taken them out for weeks at times and they do not close at all. They will not once they are that big. Unless I get surgery to get them sewn back together, they are here to stay. I do not really care though. I have had them so long at this point I forget they are even there. Story 35. I had a 1/2 inch piercing only on my left ear. I took it out when I was about 20 or 21. I am 31 now, and it has mostly closed completely. There is a small mark on the lobe from where it was stretched, but nothing can go through it. Story 36. I stretched to 00. They are mostly small enough now to wear regular earrings, but I need a fat back so they do not fall out. Story 37. I was at 2nd generation and 4th generation and let them close up as much as possible in my 30s. I can still fit 6th generation in both. Now I just have tiny rings stacked in them. Story 38. I had 7/8 inch piercings, took them out probably 12 years ago, and they returned to normal. I could probably wear normal stud earrings with no problem if I wanted. Story 39. Used to have half-inch lobes. I have not worn jewelry in them for years. They mostly look like normal holes now if you are not looking closely. I had also stretched my septum to a 0 gauge. It is still a pretty big hole and has not shrunk much since then. Story 40. I took mine out because I wanted to be able to wear dangly earrings again, but many of my alternative friends still have them. I only went to 8 millimeters, so they shrunk back to normal. Story 41. I only stretched mine to about 8 millimeters, I think, but I still have them and still like my jewelry. The only piercings I retired were the hip and clavicle microdermals because a few rejected, and I did not like looking lopsided. Story 42. I had a 0 gauge piercing that did not stretch over time as it should have, so it did not heal closed completely. I can wear studback earrings that have a plastic component to keep them in place. Other than that, they are fine. Story 43. Had 0 gauge earrings for 13 years. Took them out a few years ago because I was tired of taking care of them. They never shrunk back because I stretched both lobes at one point while sizing up. Story 44. I had gotten mine up to 4 gauge, I think, so barely. I let the size down naturally, and now that I am 45, I am stretching them again, hoping for 0 gauge or double 0 gauge. Story 45. At one point, I let them shrink down close to normal earring size and then restretched them about 5 years ago. I have double 0 plugs that I wear with dangly earrings. I still love them. Story 46. Mine were up at 22 millimeters at around 20 years old. I took them out for years and they went back down to about 8 millimeters. Now I am almost 36 and back up to 16 millimeters. Still going strong. Story 47. Still have mine. I made sure they are well aligned with the rest of the ear and not too big. Also, the tattoos do their part. I wear good oiled wooden plugs. Story 48. I was only about 2 grams, so they mostly closed but not all the way. You can still see the whole spot if you are looking for it. Story 49. Still have them, still wearing them. I have had them for well over 30 years. It was not a fashion decision. I had been working making one-off pieces for a body piercer I used to know, and she gave them to me as a form of payment. Story 50. Still have them as a 33-year-old married mother of 2 children. Most of my piercings have been removed except the ears and septum due to eventual rejection or irritation, but these are still good. I like that they provide a small contrast to my relatively boring appearance now. Story 51. I only sized mine up a bit to 6 gauge, and I am literally wearing the same jewelry I got once I settled that this was big enough. I honestly don't even think about it anymore. Story 52. Thankfully, the issue never became severe enough to be irreversible, and I resolved it when I joined the military. Story 53. Still have them. I think they are about 0 gauge or 7/16 of an inch. I went up to 1 inch, but I prefer over-the-ear headphones. I found they pressed my earrings uncomfortably, and after a while, my earlobes would get irritated. Story 54. I stopped at a double 0 gauge, so they would not stretch my earlobe too much. If I do not wear anything in them, they just look like holes. However, every once in a while, my right one will get infected and swell. Story 55. Mine were 12 millimeters or half an inch at one point in my 20s. I would say you could probably tell my ears were stretched at one point, but it is not very noticeable. I could probably start again with a 4 gauge. Story 56. Still gauged at 34 millimeters. I am sitting at 1 1/4 inches, and I love them more every day. I have a full-time job, 2 kids, and a wife I am over the moon for. Story 57. Went to half an inch. Took them out for years. About 2 years ago, I put them back in. They did not shrink, or I could not really tell. Story 58. I only got to a 0 gauge, so not huge, but they will probably never close enough to wear regular earrings without surgery. I have always been okay with that. Most days I do not wear anything in them anymore, perks of working from home, but when I do, I now opt for a smaller gauge hoop like a 2 gauge and embrace the weighted lobe look. Story 59. I'll randomly decide to size up again after almost 20 years, though I think I'm done now at 5/8. I assume they will be around until the end. Story 60. A few of my friends had smaller ones that went back to normal on their own, but I do not know anyone who had really big ones. Story 61. I had 9/16 gauges starting back in probably 2003. I took them out in 2020, I think. I can wear normal earrings, but they have to have bigger backs or I can pull them through if I try. Story 62. Just this year, I had surgery to close the earlobes. Mine were not too bad, but it bothered me for a long time not being able to wear normal earrings. Now, half a year later, I am questioning why I did it. Part of me misses it. Story 63. I never went beyond 0 gauge because I had heard they would grow back up to 0 gauge and I believed it. Obviously, everyone is different. 8 years ago, I took them out. I am pretty sure I could easily put 0 gauge in right now. My earlobes looked gross for about 6 months after I removed them, but now it is pretty unnoticeable to me. Story 64. My husband had gauges in the early 2000s. They closed and you can barely tell. If you look closely, it just looks like pierced ears. Story 65. I am 47 now. I still have them at the size I maxed out at 5/8 of an inch. I just wear nicer jewelry now, no more plastic pieces except for a few select ones. Story 66. Still rocking them. I am 35 now and started stretching them about 20 years ago. I stayed at 1/2 an inch until my late 20s, then stretched up to 5/8 of an inch. My earlobes were already big before stretching, so I only wanted to fill the space in a sense. I wear a lot of different stone and glass plugs. I love to match them with my daily outfit. Story 67. Same as they were when I was 16, although I will say my skin has become more sensitive and I mainly have to wear glass or stone. I can get away with plastic or silicone for a day or so, but I end up with irritation and swelling if I try to push it longer. Even metals don't seem to play well with my skin. Now, it's strange. It almost seems like my holes want to tighten up unless I am using glass or stone, which makes no sense because I certainly don't have more collagen or elasticity at 33 compared to 16. No regrets. I still love them, even though I occasionally wish I could wear a cute, dainty pair of studs. Story 68. I made it to as big as 0 in high school, so not too big. I took them out in college and let them shrink. They are still a little stretched out, but now I wear multiple seamless rings in them. I get lots of compliments on the way I wear them now. Edit. Added more information. Story 69. I only ever got up to 0, but I am currently rocking zeros at 39 years old. I have long hair, a nose piercing, wear band shirts 90% of the time, and play in bands myself, so it is not out of place in any situation I am in. I have had them for 22 years now. They are not as common as they used to be, so I do not see them for sale as often anymore, but I love letting my kids pick out new ones anytime we see them. Story 70. Still have them 0 gauge. Switched to silicone eyelets instead of metal to avoid any unwanted stretching from the weight of the jewelry as I got older. I work in a corporate office. No one cares. Story 71. I am 49 years old now and have been fully tattooed since the late 1990s. I worked in the body modification industry for 18 years, which gave me an early start and the experience. When I left the industry in 2016, I thought my tattoos would be a disadvantage in the traditional job market. However, the opposite has been true. Since then, I have worked 3 corporate jobs in graphic design, a field that tends to be more accepting. My tattoos have not been an issue. In fact, they have sometimes been a positive. During interviews, some companies showed clear hesitation about my appearance, which helped me realize that those were not places where I wanted to work. Story 72. I am 32 and started stretching my ears when I was about 16. I stretched up to 1 inch, 25 millimeters, and stayed there for about a year, but ultimately let them close back down to 5/8 inch, 16 millimeters. They have been at that size for almost 10 years. I do not plan on removing them completely or any of my other piercings. I think many people got tattoos, piercings, and stretched their ears because it was trendy at the time. I did it because I genuinely enjoyed the style. Story 73, 37 here. Still rocking 1-inch gauges from 2002. I am a tattoo artist, so it is like a cheat code to be an adult while being as modified as I would like. Story 74. Doing great. 1 inch for 20 years, second lobes at 6 gauge for 18 years, conch at 14 years. I hated my no-lobe ears as a kid and feel like the stretched lobes really complement my face. Mid-level in healthcare, non-patient facing. Story 75. I had gauges in my ears, not very large, and an industrial piercing. I took them all out around 2012. I can still wear my wife's earrings if I am feeling playful, but if you are not looking closely at my ears, you probably would not notice. Story 76. Still there, still doing fine. They make lots of cute jewelry options nowadays, so if you do not want them to look gauged, you can select a pretty plug with a gemstone, a pearl, a design, or whatever. Story 77. I can wear regular earrings in mine now, but the holes are still larger than necessary. If I wear small studs, they sometimes fall out. Story 78. A 34-year-old man turning 35 is making the most money he has ever earned with 7 or 8 contacts and bought a new septum ring last week. Story 79. I still have them in my 40s. During the pandemic, I did not wear jewelry, and they shrunk down to almost normal size. I missed them, so I stretched them back again. Story 80. 0 grams here. Mostly, I forget that they are there. Occasionally, maybe once a year, I consider letting them heal, but my wife tells me I should keep them because I would look too square otherwise. Story 81. I shrunk mine down to 1 inch and I still wear jewelry. Much fancier custom pieces made from precious metals and gemstones. No more Hot Topic or Spencer's items. For me, it was part fashion, but it is also deeply cultural. My parents never said anything negative about it, but they also never encouraged it. Story 82. I have had mine half an inch since I was 16 and am now about to turn 31. I love them just as much as I did at 16 and have no plans to close them up. Story 83. I took my 1-inch plugs out in 2016 for a sales professional career. I am working a blue-collar job now and have them again. Originally, the agreement to be in sales required me to have surgery, but I never did. They shrank close to a 00, and I started going back up to 1 inch in late 2023. I have multiple pieces of jewelry that I wear, but mostly just silicone ones since my job is very dirty. Story 84. I was at 5/8 of an inch over 20 years ago. For the most part, it just looks like a wrinkle on my lobe now. I can still fit 8-gauge earrings. There is no need for surgery or anything. I had large earlobes and stretching never really caused much damage. Story 85. Got up to 7/8 of an inch when I graduated high school in 2015. I had a crisis where I thought I was going to join the army and took the earrings out. I didn't end up joining the army because I didn't have the money to have them surgically repaired. Now I'm just heavily tattooed and have holes in my earlobes. I'm not sure what size I'd be at now, probably a 0 or 00. Story 86. 39 years old and still wear jewelry every day. 1-inch plugs that used to be snug are becoming a bit loose. I don't have any tattoos, which sometimes surprises people. They are not a job stopper, and I have gotten used to the change they make to my silhouette. Plus, how else will everyone know how unique, cool, and rebellious I am? Story 87. I am a girl and had my ears stretched to 3/4 inch, which is 19 millimeters, from the age of 15 to 26. I took them out and they shrunk to a 0 gauge. I usually wear small, cute, spiky heart earrings that hang with some weight, and I receive many compliments on them, so I guess it worked out. I don't regret ever stretching them. It's whatever. My mom absolutely hated it while I was growing up. Story 88. I still have gauges, but mine are small, 11 millimeters. I never really wanted bigger ones. There are many beautiful choices for jewelry, so I get to play around with them and wear lots of fun, sparkly things. I receive many compliments, especially on the opals. I do have friends who got really large gauges when we were in our 20s but later regretted them because their style or profession changed. Story 89. Mostly closed up, you can tell they used to be stretched, but the silhouette is like a normal lobe. I did not take them out for any particular reason. When I was about 23, one of them came out during a beer league baseball game. I could not find it, so I took the other out for the day and never put them back in. Story 90. Still have my half-inch gauges and can now afford to match my earrings with my outfits. Teenage me could never. Story 91. I went up to 3/4 of an inch and had my cartilage stretched to a 2 gauge. The cartilage on one side fully grew skin back. On the other side, I could probably fit a 14 gauge. My lobes could probably fit a 14 gauge as well. I work for the government. Most people do not comment. Sometimes someone will say, I can see through your ear, meaning my cartilage. Story 92. I only slightly stretched mine. Now I can wear normal earrings, and it doesn't seem like the hole will ever close. I haven't worn earrings in about 5 years, but I just put a pair in to check. You can't tell I ever stretched them at all. Story 93. I have had a 2-inch haircut for close to 12 years now. I am 33 years old. I am a barber and still love them. I have no plans to get my hair cut shorter. If anything, the idea of going bigger crosses my mind occasionally. Story 94. I took mine out when I was pregnant, and they shrank considerably. Now I just have a hole the size of my pinky. Kind of looks like a slit now. I'm not crazy about it, but I'm too busy to care, to be honest. Story 95. I stopped stretching a while back and have been happily sitting at 5/8 of an inch for a long time. I really don't have a desire to stretch or shrink them. I like the size. My lip is stretched to 7/16 of an inch, and I also really like this size on my face. I don't plan to close the hole unless my dental health is at risk. I wear custom-fit jewelry and so far, so good. I do fear eventual gum recession, though. Story 96. I went up to 00 and let them close. I now call them cat butts. I can still fit a small gauge in there, but usually just wear dangly earrings with a backing. Story 97. Had one blowout at 7/8 inch or 1 inch, cannot remember, back in about 2008, and both have since healed very well. The one that blew out is scar tissue with a tiny hole, and the other is small but flexible. I got so lucky. Story 98. Everyone I know who got gauged ears either still wears them after more than 20 years or has stopped putting gauges in. I only stretched up to size 2. There's mostly healed. I can only wear regular earrings now. I borrow my wife's holiday earrings. Considering I am a large man with a big beard, it is funny. Story 99. Still have them and wear them all the time. I have a decent collection of jewelry to choose from, so they are even more fun now, although I do stand out a bit in the Parent-Teacher Association meetings. Story 100. I'm a chef, so gauges and tattoos with salt and pepper hair give a true vibe. I'll probably always wear solid black ones. It's part of my look now. Story 101. Went up and down over the years but have been happy at 5/8 of an inch. Although sometimes I still feel like going back up to 3/4 of an inch. Story 102. I had mine stretched to an inch. I mostly did it because of the band I was in. Both of these lasted for 8 years. A few years after the band ended, I stopped wearing plugs and tunnels but found the holes were not closing. I had surgery to close them and was surprised my insurance covered it fully. 10 years later, it is like I never had my ears stretched. It is also fun to show people what I used to look like. Story 103. Still have them and love them. I have found a shop that makes hanging earrings for gauged ears, so I feel like I can accessorize beyond my silicone tunnels and a couple of steel ones from Amazon. The selection out there is definitely becoming harder to find in my experience. Story 104. I am 38, a professional engineer, and a mother now. My earlobes have been stretched to 1 inch for the last 20 years. They are very cute. Story 105. I have had my ears stretched for close to 20 years and still wear them. I got sick of losing plugs and having to buy new expensive jewelry. I have worn ring stacks, 10 hoops in each ear, for about 5 years. They are much more comfortable, and I forget I have them until my child loops a finger through. Story 106. Went up to a size 2 gauge, eventually backed off to an 8. I take them out for my job as a scientist at a pharmaceutical company and put them back in when I get home. Story 107. I stretched mine a couple of times. I think I did a 0, then took them out for a few years and they closed to about a 10 without anything in them. Then I stretched them back out to 5/8. The plugs I had irritated my ears and the skin became weird and peeling, so I took them out and let them close up. They got down to about an 8, the size of a Lego lightsaber, if I move my ear, but you can't tell when my ears are in their natural position. Story 108. Still wearing them. Zero gauge, haven't gone up in size in over 15 years. I have occasionally thought about going to 5/8 of an inch just because the options for plugs are way cooler and you can see the designs easier, but I love hangers too much. I have some saddles in now, but I otherwise swap around between silicone tunnels of varying colors, solid black plugs, and sometimes elaborate carved horn, bone, or wood hangers for fancier occasions. Story 109. I got to 1/2 an inch. Now the hole won't close, but I don't care, because the holes aren't even big enough to notice. People who do notice are always oddly impressed and ask about it. I just tell them I had 1/2-inch gauges, and when I turned 18, I started working at a restaurant, and they didn't want me having them. I took them off, lost them, and had no money to buy more. They closed. I measured once when I was 24, and found out that each ear was a different size. You know what, I might go buy some when I get paid. Thanks. I'm 28 now. Story 110. My husband can still fit a pencil through his ear holes. It still weirds me out 16 years later. Our children think it is hilarious. Story 111. I had mine stretched up to 5/8 of an inch and took them out about 5 years ago. Now there is barely a hole there. I miss them and think about doing it again, but maybe not so large. Story 112. Still at a zero gauge and don't think I will ever go bigger. I still love them and don't think I will get rid of them anytime soon. Story 113. I stretched mine to a modest 0.0 gauge, 10 millimeters, and kept my dreadlocks in the flesh tunnel metal hoops. Now I am bald, and the holes have shrunk to be barely noticeable. Story 114. Still have them with the same jewelry, basic silver metal tunnels, sitting pretty at 0.0 gauge since 2007, I think. I don't need to hide them, and I'm a corporate girl. Haha to all the adults at the time who said I would never get a good job with them. Story 115. Only did a small gauge and it is mainly back to normal. I still cannot wear tiny studs though, hoops for life. Story 116. I'm at 1.5 inches and have no plans to remove them. It has been nearly 17 years since I first got pierced and started stretching. Story 117. Stretched mine to a size 2 in high school. I am 34 now and still have them and wear tunnels every day. Still love them, no regrets. Story 118. I still have mine. I almost got them stitched because they were getting infected constantly, but getting them stitched makes me feel a bit nauseous. I wear stacks from Ask and Embla and have had no issues with them since. I sized down from an inch twice. The first size down went all the way to piercing size. The second size down only went to 0.0. I don't see many people with them anymore either. Story 119. I worked with a man around 2010 who used to have stretched earlobes but quit. It was hard to have a serious conversation with him while resisting the urge to flick his dangling earlobes. At least he was cool about it and knew it looked ridiculous. Story 120. Still have them. I stretched to about 0.0 gauge when I was 23. Started when I was 20. My ex-husband didn't like it and kept making negative remarks about it, so I didn't wear the jewelry for probably 5 years. Then I decided to ignore everyone's opinions. The 0.0 gauge went back in fine, and within a month they were stretchy enough to go to 7/16 of an inch. I have been at this size for about a decade now with no interest in upsizing. I will keep them forever. Story 121. I never went past 0, so you can tell they were pierced and have never closed. I can wear earrings if I ever want, but I do not have a hole. I am thankful I kept mine small. Story 122. I gauged my ears starting at about 16 and reached a size 0, I think. I am 30 now and have kept the silicone rings since then. I like them and they are not too big to be off-putting to people. Story 123. I never went bigger than a 2 gauge because I wanted to give the holes the chance to shrink back down, and they did. Story 124. I only got as far as 2 gauge after 2 failed attempts to stretch up to 0 gauge. I know, not a huge diameter. I abandoned stretching my lobes after the second attempt, and after a few years of having my lobes at 2 gauge, I let them shrink down. You can't tell they were ever stretched now. Story 125. I only ever stretched up to 0 gauge, and now they have shrunk back down to the size of a standard earring. You cannot tell they were ever stretched. They only took a month or 2 to close for me. Story 126. I only did a quarter-inch. They look perfectly normal, but if my danglies do not have rubber stoppers on them, they will somehow find a way to self-eject. Story 127. I have maintained a good job for 4.5 years now. I have done various tasks, including working for the United States Department of State. Nobody really cares or talks about it. Edit. Adding that I was around 1.25 inches. Story 128. They are still somewhat stretched and bigger than regular earrings. I went to size 00. I work as a registered nurse and no one ever asks about it. Story 129. I got my ears pierced more than 27 years ago, stretched quickly to 00, then to 5/8 of an inch and stopped at 3/4 of an inch. I am still at 3/4 of an inch. It is part of my self-image. I cannot imagine my face without it. Admittedly, I wear simpler jewelry now, silicone tunnels, and leave it out for the weekends. Story 130. I had 3/4 inch gauges and took them out about 12 years ago. Now they have shrunk quite a bit and look like two perfect, pencil eraser-sized holes in my ears, almost like someone used a handheld single-hole punch on my ears. I was really surprised they shrank and healed that well, as I was fully expecting floppy lobes. Story 131. I still have mine and I am about to turn 46. I have a massive jewelry collection, including many discontinued items, so I am never letting them go. Story 132. Still have zeros in, and I found a super cute jewelry maker for plugs called Frilly Feline. They look much cuter now than with Hot Topic gauges. Story 133. Got up to 1/2 inch and still have them. I work a corporate job and I think there are 2 others with gauged ears. No one really cares and I buy the fun dangling ones. Story 134. I stopped at a 4 gauge and let them close naturally since I wanted to get a white-collar job. They closed over the next few months to a year, and now they look like I barely had 18 gauge years ago. Healed up like a charm. Got 2 white-collar jobs in the last 3 years until this February when Dogecoin was running its course. Never got any looks or comments about having them after the housing market crash of 2008. Story 135. I am a 33-year-old blue-collar worker at 00. They will not close without surgery. I somewhat regret them, but they have not affected my life in any way. I get compliments on my jewelry all the time. Story 136. Still good. I am 33 now, and the size is above 1/2 inch. I do not know how else I would be. I have had them stretched since I was 14. Story 137. I have 00 gauge ears and work in government. I am currently in a back office role but was front-facing for a decade. I mostly wear stone plugs, which honestly don't look like much. They don't feel very alternative, but I am in California. Sometimes I wear metal saddles with something hanging on my weekends, or if I am doing a specific look. I wanted them bigger, but I have double pierced ears since the 1980s. My stretched piercings are not centered in my earlobes, so I felt it would look weird if they were bigger. They are too close to my jaw and cheek. The 00 gauge is great, but I think the next size up would look unbalanced. Story 138. I'm a beginner. Started about a year or 2 ago. I'm at 12 millimeters now and work in a customer-facing job. Nobody has ever said anything to me about it at work, though my extended family likes to comment on it. I like them, so they're here to stay. Story 139. I went up to 3/8 of an inch, and you cannot even tell that my ears are pierced anymore. The last time I put something through them, about 10 years ago, I could fit an 8 gauge. Story 140. I wear wood tunnels with a hole diameter similar to that of a Ticonderoga pencil, the tunnel diameter about half that. I love them. They are really comfortable. Wood does not get gross like other materials. I shower, sleep, swim, and do whatever else in them. When I bike or the wind blows at just the right angle, sometimes they whistle. My original piercings were done in a mall kiosk, and like a good millennial, I diligently turned them and covered them with alcohol every day as instructed. They are at an angle between 30 and 45 degrees to my head, so I always hated the way hoops looked in my ears. I still hate the feeling of pokey normal earring backs. That is why I originally stretched them. My ears are really sensitive, and swapping out earrings of any kind has always caused swelling and issues. Now I have really fun big, heavy earrings that I can wear through my wood tunnels just for outings. It spreads the weight out so they are comfortable to wear. My skin does not get irritated by swapping them since they only touch the wood. This also means I can buy inexpensive metals and funky earrings from artist markets. Before gauges, I hated wearing earrings. That is why I gauged them in my late teens. Story 141. Still love them. I'm at 5/8 of an inch and am happy here. I have lots of cute jewelry and always get interesting questions about it from little kids. I even landed a professional level government job with them. Story 142. Honestly, I kind of forgot about it from around 2012 to 2022. I kept them in and cared for them but never truly thought about it. I was at 3/4 of an inch for basically 10 years. Then, out of nowhere, I decided I wanted to finish stretching to 1 inch and did. I like it. The random compliment or conversation they start is always a pleasant and welcome surprise. I think they add some easy, everyday personality to my otherwise tame and uneventful style. They can be a pain with headphones, exercise, swimming, and sex, but worth it in the end for me. Story 143. I am 38 years old. I have half-inch lobes, a tattoo on my forehead, facial piercings, and believe it or not, I work at a public library. Story 144. I am a younger millennial who started stretching my ears about 10 years ago. I have long passed my goal size of 0 gauge and have been sitting at 3/4 of an inch for the last 3 years or so. I live in a smaller town in a fairly conservative area and honestly receive a surprising number of compliments on my jewelry. I have even had a coworker tell me, "I never liked stretched ears, but I really like yours." I love wearing large, decorated gauges and plan on having them for years to come. Story 145. I had to get surgery. When I am not wearing earrings, they look normal, but without earrings, you can tell that there is something going on. Story 146. I got to 16 millimeters in both ears, and a second one to 8 or 10 millimeters in my right ear. They shrunk down to almost non-existent. I was telling people from work the other day that I used to have 9 piercings in my ears with stretched lobes, and none of them had any clue. I can still get earrings through them, maybe a pencil, but it would hurt. I did my stretching over a long time, very slow incremental gain, which helped the healing a lot, as well as not going too big. There is no scar tissue because I did it slowly. I took mine out when someone older, whose opinion I respected, said my ears were more offensive than my tattoos. I could never hide my ears, but all my tattoos on my arms, torso, and legs can be easily hidden. I was trying to get into corporate work out of hospitality, so that mattered. This was probably 18 years ago. Times were much different. I have recently thought about putting them back in, maybe to 10 millimeters. Some nice black plugs would be cool. Story 147. I had them cut out and stitched closed. I regret it and wish I still had them. I did it for a job that ultimately did not pan out anyway. Story 148. Mine snapped back. I can barely get my earrings in now. I can't remember the gauge size, but it was big enough for lucite horns to go through. Definitely big enough for me to be shocked they snapped back. I lost a horn, so I took them both out. I never got around to replacing the horns for a while. When I did, they had shrunk, and I didn't feel like doing the process again, so I let them keep shrinking. I love them but don't miss them. Story 149. I have had mine for about 13 years now. They work fine for dining, and it took my boss 2 years to realize I had them. I always wear natural stone plugs, so they just look like oversized earrings, I guess. Story 150. Mine weren't huge, about 7/8 of an inch. I got jumped by 5 guys in college, and it damaged both ears, so I let the piercings close. I think the trauma caused them to shrink more than usual. Now I just have a couple of slits and still small holes. I just look like I have odd earlobes. Story 151. I didn't really start gauging my ears until 2013, but I got to 25 millimeters and then started having neck problems that were aggravated by my gauges pushing into my neck when I lay on my side, so I had to take them out. Now I can maybe fit a marker through them, but I don't have jewelry that size, so I just have big holes. I really don't care, though. One half of my head is shaved, and the other side usually has my hair behind my ear. The only person who ever asked me about it was my 6-year-old neighbor. I would have kept them and probably kept going bigger if it weren't for my neck. Story 152. I got my first piercing at 24 in 2019, a septum piercing. I got my earlobes pierced later that same year and stretched them over the next year. I love my piercings. I work in a professional environment and have never had any issues. I am still happy with them and plan on getting more piercings and tattoos. A big part of what I love about my piercings is showing kids that you can express yourself and present a somewhat alternative style while still being just another person. Story 153. I had one stretched ear for probably 15 years. I was around 10 years old when I stretched it, before I decided to stretch the second one last year. The first one I stretched with a taper. The second one I stretched by dead stretching. They are both doing fine, and I am contemplating stretching them a bit more because it is never enough. They are both 6 millimeters. Story 154. I took them out, but the holes on my earlobe are still there. Sometimes I put something through them just to make sure they did not close completely. I might go back to at least one, though. Story 155. My partner had large ear gauges in the past. We now use his earlobes to hold glow sticks when we take night walks with the children while camping. Story 156. Took them out, and they somewhat closed up when I met my now husband. A few years later, I honestly missed them, so I restarted stretching them. I think I will have these forever. It is not a phase. Story 157. Do you even have a choice? I assume it's either wear them forever or have that shrunken piece of skin hanging on the side of your head. Story 158. Gauge to 00 around 15 years old and still have them. They try to close up if I have them out for more than a day or two. Story 159. I removed them some years ago after a shower and never put them back in. They shrank almost back to normal. There is just a small hole in each earlobe that will never fully close. Story 160. Probably hanging out with the people from the late 1990s who got tribal tattoos in a very dark bar. Story 161. I only went to a belly button ring size, I think. They seem to have closed down to a normal size now. However, one ear hole is definitely lower than the other. It closed from the top down while the other closed around the center. I do not know. Story 162. Adorable, and I get compliments all the time. The front holes are size 0, and I wear clear plastic plugs. The second holes are normal, and I wear very dangly earrings in those. I have a couple of other holes in my ears too. Buzzed hair. Tattoos. I work in healthcare and I have a career I love. My patients love me back. They either do not notice my earrings or love them. Story 163. My friend got his dad to pay for him to have his large cat ears fixed by a cosmetic surgeon, which cost over £3,000 10 years ago. He literally began stretching them out again. I guess you cannot cure stupidity. Story 164. They look just as foolish or worse now than they did then. That is how they are doing. I would say at least half of my friends who did it have now had to have surgery to fix it. Those who have not fixed it do not have solid or good jobs. This is all anecdotal evidence, to be sure. Story 165. Still have them, although they are only 0 and 2 gauge. I had a friend who owned a business importing jewelry from Indonesia, and I have dozens of amazing plugs as well as some hanging jewelry for them. They were actually only 8 and 10 gauge before she started giving me jewelry, so I stretched them out about 20 years ago. Took me around a year and a half, but I was kind of a slacker and probably could have done it quicker. I remember about 10 years ago, I was playing with my young niece, and one plug came out. She said, "Oh my goodness, you can see light through your ear." I think until then, she just thought they were normal button-shaped earrings. Story 166. I stayed at a 1/4 inch and do not regret it. It does not dangle or resemble a loose earlobe. When I was younger, all the comments were negative, whereas nowadays I get a lot of "love the hole in your ear, man," or just generally more positive interactions than negative. Story 167. Possibly the worst trend of all time. Whenever I see someone with those huge stretched-out earlobes, I just think of a white lower-middle-class suburban Hot Topic kid, a cul-de-sac rebel. Story 168. Got to 22 millimeters in college, stretched up too fast because I was impatient and wanted to be intense immediately. Got a bad tear and took them out. Haven't put them back in since. I still have the holes and my earlobes do sag a bit, but I do not regret having them at all. Maybe one day I will put them back in. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.